right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Wildlife Management Q&A webinar. My name is Avalon Powell. I am the Senior Marketing Coordinator for Plateau, and I'll be assisting our presenters, Tim Milligan and Kameron Bain, with moderating questions this evening. So this webinar is scheduled for approximately an hour. We're going to spend some time answering some pre-submitted and commonly asked questions. And then we'll open it up for a live Q&A at the end where you can submit your questions through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So to access that, you should simply be able to scroll over your Zoom screen and see a toolbar that pops up at either the top or the bottom of the screen. And on that toolbar is an option for Q&A. If you click that, it'll open up a separate pop-up box and you can type your questions directly in. After the webinar, we will be providing a recording and a PowerPoint and a follow-up email. You may have noticed the recording in progress, little message that comes through. And if you think of any follow-up questions at that time, please don't hesitate to respond to that follow-up email and send those questions over to us. We're happy to get you an answer then. So without further ado, Tim, please feel free to take it away. Oops, you're muted, Tim.
Okay, unmute. There you go. Well, Tim starts off like he usually does. Thank you, Avalon, for getting this thing started. Thank you, Kameron, for being here. Y'all, we're gonna have some fun tonight. It's gonna be I think it'll be a good one. We've got some neat questions that came in. I look forward to y'all's questions. We're gonna go over a little company stuff real quick, just some introductions, and then we'll recap just briefly the 7 activity categories so everybody kind of gets the blood pumping about, okay, wildlife management activities. That's usually what this stuff is all about. We'll talk about some pre-submitted questions, then go into y'all's. Hopefully it'll take 30 minutes to an hour. We'll be here as long as y'all need us to. That's the key to this thing, is that we get to spend a little time with landowners that want to be involved and want a little extra information, and we all learn from each other. Kameron Bain is with us tonight, and I'm excited because Kameron is, I'm gonna let her tell you a little bit about herself, but she's the glue that holds this thing together for a lot of people. And Kameron, if you will, just introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your time here at Plateau.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, my name is Kameron Bain. I am the landowner account manager at Plateau, which really means I'm here to help our clients. I've been working at Plateau for 14 years. Most of that time has been spent working on service agreements. I have 10 years of service agreement experience, which has led me to learn all about our wildlife management activities and staying in compliance. So I have a lot of knowledge in the books over those 10 years. But yeah, like I said, I'm here to help the clients. I'll be reaching out to you throughout the year with reminders. If you get any report request, I'm going to let you know about it and what the next steps are. Any changes with the CADs, I will be reaching out to you and giving you updates if necessary. But mainly I'm here to support you. So if you have any questions or need anything, you can always contact me.
That's awesome. Kameron, where are you? I'm not gonna try not to embarrass you, and if you want me to shut up, tell me to. Where are you from?
I am from Conway, New Hampshire. So
and you've been down here for how long?
Probably around 20 years now.
20 years. And
yeah.
Y'all live currently in the Kyle area, is that right?
San Marcos.
San Marcos, okay.
Yeah, just moved.
So it dawned on me today that, you know, we talk a lot about what we do with Plateau, and I was talking to a landowner the other day and I realized that they were really into something that a good friend of mine, you know, we never really talk about what some of our other biologists and what we do and what we enjoy doing and those kind of things. So I just thought it'd be interesting. I mean, you know, just to kind of know a little bit more about you. And I know you and your husband like to fish every once in a while. Is there anything else that you're into that somebody might not know?
Well, I mean, we love dogs. I don't have children, I have puppies.
Yeah.
So, we talk about dogs all the time. We look at dogs all the time. That's our passion, is probably dogs.
Kameron loves the Beatles too, right?
And yes.
In particular,
Paul McCartney.
All right, very good. Very good. So that's the stuff I want to know. All right, very good. So my name's Tim Milligan. I'm the sales manager here at Plateau, for lack of a better term. Been here around 13 years, started as a technician. You kind of start to see a trend with, you know, the people that do these presentations. Most of the people at Plateau have been here quite a while. We've got new people around, but people tend to stick. And I'll be real honest, I didn't know I was going to stick when I came here. I'm not a biologist. I came up in the car business, in the finance end of the car business, came to Plateau because I had kind of was looking for a way to get out of that, and was started as a technician treating fire ants and filling feeders. And 13 years later, I've kind of moved through the system, and much like Kameron, started as an admin, I believe, and moved through the system and learned the process as she went. Everything I know about wildlife management, I learned here, and I learned from our biologists and from our landowners. Sure enough, as time went on, we never knew anything about wildlife management, but as my parents got older, my dad passed, and just a time happened, we moved our property into wildlife management. So we've been in wildlife management on our family property for about 7 or 8 years now. So I've been involved in a lot of the things that we're going to discuss. I've had plenty of experience with making mistakes, not doing things I needed to do on time. I've made all the mistakes you can make. I've had all the fear and anxiety that everybody else has had. So I feel like I bring that to the table, some of these experiences, and the experiences I've learned from our landowners while doing these presentations over the years. I'm born in Lubbock, but raised in Austin. A beautiful wife and a couple kids here in Dripping Springs that make me look like I know what I'm doing. I love bird hunting, quail hunting. I actually guiding quail hunts with a bunch of bird dogs that, again, make me look like I know what I'm doing. And like fishing, like to go fishing, like to fly fish, like to fish on the Texas coast. That's a little bit about me. So, maybe we've got something in common. If we can ever, we love it when people just call and talk, that kind of thing. When people if we have something in common with our landowners, it's good to know it. But anyway, that's me. We're going to get into this presentation. I bored you enough with that. Appreciate you're giving us the time to do that. I know, most of y'all here are Plateau customers. What I want to touch on this real quick, but sometimes even our customers don't know everything that we do. And maybe they got in with a wildlife management, and that's really all they've heard about so far with a wildlife plan. And I just want to remind everybody that we're here for you. Our entire company is here for you. And we're more than just wildlife. So we are a Texas-based company, been around since '97, over 20 years. We've got this staff of wildlife biologists. They're all our staff. They're on call. They're for you guys. They're also property tax consultants, both registered property tax consultants and senior property tax consultants. So don't think it stops at just the wildlife management part. Any property tax issues you have, we can help with. Our wildlife field technicians, near and dear to my heart, because that's what I came up doing. I know they're out there in the heat right now, and I know the work they're doing. They do the work when you can't or when you don't want to. That's what they're here for, to make sure people can maintain without burdening themselves. And then the sales support and customer service staff, which I'm more of a part of, and our marketing staff, Avalon and our marketing staff, we're all here to keep the train on the tracks and keep you on the straight and narrow. What I always like to say is our biologists, man, they're incredibly smart. They're going to give you the absolute best wildlife management plan and the best recommendations you could possibly get. My job and Kameron's job and Avalon's job is to make sure that you understand it all. That when we talk to you, it makes sense to you as a person, and that you can understand it, and that it's not overwhelming to you. And then I just want to remind you that we're more than just wildlife management. The thought of Gilman Auto Group came up. The reason I'm saying all this, I'm going to talk about our family of companies real quick, about the other companies that we have. And the thought of Gilman Auto Group, I used to work in a car business, and it used to drive me crazy when a neighbor of mine, someone in my neighborhood, would drive down the road in a new vehicle from another dealership when it was a car that we sold. It was a vehicle that we sold. So let's say I worked at the Chevy dealership, and one of my buddies or somebody down the street bought a Ford. It wasn't that I wanted to sell them that Ford. It's just that I knew what our company would do for them. I knew I could be involved if they needed help, and I could have my hands in it. I know if you're working with our law firm, if you're working with our real estate company or anything like that, Kameron and I can still be involved. There's a little more accountability there. That's the only reason I'd rather you use one of our attorneys. Not the only reason. I know they're the best, but it's one reason why, if you need that kind of help, maybe you're dealing with condemnation or estate planning or things like that, I'd love to introduce you to one of our attorneys, because then I'm somewhat involved. I don't need to be involved in your business, but they know it came from me. They know it came from Kameron or from one of our folks. Our land group is not a real estate company per se. It's a company that helps people find a good realtor. So rather than hitting that button on Realtor or on Zillow and getting 1,000 emails from people you don't know for the rest of your life, it's a personal touch of someone at our company that knows a realtor in the area that you may be looking to sell or buy, that can refer you to a quality realtor who will then be, kind of on board, or kind of not beholden, but, feel kind of obligated to take better care of you because they were referred by us. And then the Plateau Exchange is just a 1031, it's a tax mechanism. We can talk about that later. But I just want to bring up that, we have these companies that we can help you with. Don't forget that, and ask about them if you have questions about our other companies. So I'll get off of that now. We're going to recap the 7 activity categories, but that was just the best way I could think of to explain it. It's not that I want us to be in everything you do. It's that I don't want you to go off and hire somebody that may not know what they're doing quite as well as I have a great example, if anybody wants to hear it, of someone who hired someone outside our company to do the same thing we were doing. And in the end, it was a condemnation deal and somebody had to lose. And unfortunately, the group he was working with lost and our group won. And so, that's where I don't want to see my landowners go off and buy a Ford from somebody I don't know. You need help in the car business, I could probably help you there too. But anyway, so the 7 activity categories, the fun stuff. Well, let's get into the wildlife management and get Tim to quit preaching. Y'all know the 7 activity categories. If you've got your wildlife management plan, it should be laid out for you. Of course, we can always help you with any questions you have about these, but there's these 7 activity categories and you're expected to do these activities. You're expected to maintain compliance and do enough activity to qualify every year. And that's kind of why we're doing these webinars, because this time of year, we start running into people. I'm behind on mine. Let's just face it. It's been hot. It's been busy. I haven't done the things I needed to do. I need to get out of my property. Tammy, if you're listening from Travis County right now, I'm doing them. I'm just behind and they're going to get done. And I hope she is here. She's a blessing to me. The appraisers we work with are wonderful. But I'm like most people. I have other priorities sometimes that get in the way. And I look up and I realize I haven't done as much as I wish I had by now. So remember the activity categories. Remember that you need to do them. Look through your plan. These pictures are here to represent documentation of those activity categories. The important thing when you're in wildlife management, if nothing else, I try to make the appraiser's job as easy as possible by taking good photographs and documenting what I do. So at the end of the year, when they ask me to show them what I did, it's really easy for me to show them. If I've got nest boxes and water and food in my plan, and those are some of the activities I'm doing throughout the year, and I show up at the end of the year with a report that has photographs like this in it, with notes of the dates that I went out there and what I saw and what I did and how much food I put in and how many nest boxes I checked and whether the water was filled or not and whether I put water in, those kind of things. If I'm doing that, I should never run into any issue at all, because the appraiser can then look at my wildlife management report and know that, hey, Tim's doing what he needs to do. And it makes their job that much easier. So I feel like it's kind of our obligation to make sure we're doing that for our appraisers, and that we're telling our landowners this. It's very important. It's one of the things that Kameron and I deal with a lot. Is she helps with people with our annual reports, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But at the end of the year, collecting that documentation for people. And if you keep up with it throughout the year, you'll have a much better experience with this. So that's where we want to make sure and we emphasize these things. And again, some more examples of that, whether it's feeders or strip mowing, that's our strip disking on the left there, water, things like that. These are just examples of the activities and how you might document them. Again, beautiful photos that Avalon's been nice enough to put in here, but they represent these activities. And I think that's the best way for us to show you what documentation looks like, is to show you the documentation that we would keep. I'm really good at it because I came up as a technician with Plateau. If I had just started in wildlife management without ever having any experience here, and maybe I'd done my own plan and no one had really explained what I needed to do to me, I might not keep this kind of documentation. I might not know to. Or on the other end of it, I might have heard, hey, you need to keep documentation. I might be like the lady in Bear County who took 450 pictures of fire ant mounds. You don't need to do that either. You need, it's representative photos that just kind of prove that you actually did it, so no one can question it. More photos, great photos, fire ant treatment, hogs. Again, hogs are a great example of, and fire ant treatment as well, a great example of make sure you're taking some documentation, because you can trap hogs and move them off your property. If you don't take some photos of it, nobody knows you did that. Kameron, is that you in that picture down below? I can't tell, it may not be.
No, it's Kendall.
Oh, okay, good.
We get confused all the time for each other. So.
It's a bird survey that we're doing. So there's a lot of different ways to keep documentation, but just always remember to document what you do. In your plan also, we talk about timing of activities. there's this document in your wildlife management plan that goes through the year, and it lays out the different time that it's good to do your activities. So if you've got a wildlife management plan, you have this in it, and you'll also have the biologist recommendations in there that'll go through. They will have gone through, okay, if you're going to do this or that, they'll have those times written in there and when you should do it and how to document it and everything else. But if you ever want to switch activities or do something else, look back at that thing and say, okay, is this a good time to do it? If I was thinking about shredding right now or disking, I might look and go, you look at this and, well, really, I shouldn't start until September. That's a better activity during the fall. Let the grasses continue to grow during the summer, during the spring, that kind of thing. Let all that happen. Let the breeding go away and then start shredding. Quail counts start up pretty soon, different things like that. Different things, in this activity matrix or this activity calendar that can be real useful to you. So don't forget to use the tools that we've given you. And if you can't find them, or if you don't have them, call us and ask for them. That's what we're here for. So now we get to some of the fun stuff, the frequently asked questions. I got some interesting questions this week, and I have some more that I'm not going to get to that I'll kind of let y'all know at the end of the thing, if you want to come back, what to expect next week too. But we'll get into these frequently asked questions, and then we'll get back to y'all. And I'll remind you as I'm going through this that if you'll scroll up to the top with your mouse, a little thing comes down. Usually there's a drop down box. If you want to ask questions today, there's a Q&A section of there. Hit that little button on the Q&A thing and put your questions in there, and Avalon's going to read them at the end. So Kameron and I can answer questions. Don't miss this opportunity with Kameron here to ask questions about your activities, about our products and services and service agreements, because it's a great time to get those questions answered. So question, real simple, or not, it's not a simple one. I consider it simple because I get it all the time, but when's a good time to do fire ant treatment? How is that done? So if I look back a page, let's see, Urfa is what we call it. Urfa stands for imported red fire ant. There's actually many different kinds of fire ants, but the ones we have here that are a problem are called imported red fire ants. So we use the term Urfa. That's the correct initials or whatever you want to call that thing. Urfa. So you can see March through May, and then Urfa comes up again in the fall. May not be on here, but the fall is another good time to treat Urfa. Spring and fall is when you want to treat fire ants. And what you want to be careful of, there's a practice to it. The big red ants, those big harvester ants that you see that have a real flat mound on the ground, you don't want to treat them. Those are good ants. If they bite you, it hurts like the dickens, but they don't bite you unless you're down there messing with them and playing with them. Fire ants are the ones that'll crawl up your leg and sting the tar out of you. The imported red fire ants. There are Texas native fire ants. They're actually good ants. The way I was always told is that the more of those harvester ants and the more native Texas fire ants I have, the fewer imported fire ants I have, because they all compete for the same food sources. So if you treat the imported ones and you leave the other ones alone, they'll eventually outcompete the imported ones, just like our native grasses will outcompete invasive grasses if we leave them alone and don't graze them down to the nub. But anyway, so spring and fall is a great time. It's the best time to treat them. The way we treat them is a mound treatment method where you walk through an area and you cordon off, or you kind of mark off the area you want to treat. And every property has a different amount that they need to treat. That should be in your plan. And as you go through that area, you treat the mounds individually, sprinkling bait around the mounds. Lots of interesting stuff I learned when I was treating fire ants. I know more about fire. My kids know more about fire ants than most do. You don't treat right on the mound. You treat around the mound, around about a foot outside it. I would have never known that. I just, throw bait on the mound. Well, when you do that, the mound feels like it's being attacked. And oftentimes they'll take that bait and they'll spread it out. They'll do away with it instead of bringing it into the mound. If you treat around the outside of the mound, they get out and they forage for food like they always do, and they bring the bait back in the way they should. You don't want to disturb the mound before you treat. So you don't want to kick it before you sprinkle bait on it, because then they're angry and they don't want to collect any food. And then there's interestingly enough, how you tell Texas fire ants from imported red fire ants. If you do stick a little stick in the fire ant mound, if they crawl up the stick, they're imported red fire ants. So they're the ones that will come and crawl up your leg and go all the way. My dad got stung by fire ants a long time ago. They crawled all the way up his jumpsuit, all the way up to his shoulders, and he was covered with them. And it was I laugh a little bit now. It was scary at the time, but he disrobed in the middle of the field while we were building fence. And I didn't know what was going on. Me and my brother were looking at him. He was dancing around. And it's because fire ants crawled all the way up him and started stinging him. But the imported red fire ants are the only ones that will climb up a stick or climb up something to attack. If you do that to a native Texas fire ant mound, just put a little stick or a little piece of grass in it, they'll mill around outside of it like they're angry and stuff, but they won't crawl up. It's interesting anyway, just interesting to me. So anyway, fire ant treatment, a mound treatment method is what we recommend. Spring and fall, walk the area and take pictures and keep notes. Next question. I'm about to move across the state. What do I do about my wildlife activities? Well, this is a cool one. And Kameron, I may have you touch on this a little bit if you want to. Landowner called, said they're fixing to move to the other side of Dallas. And their property is down here in Bandera where they lived before. And they want someone to help them. They don't know what to do about their activities. They're doing them themselves right now. My suggestion was that we can help. Wildlife management service agreement is a great way to do that. Kameron, you want to touch a little bit on, kind of maybe the kind that person might need if they're moving away and can't of it, and then the other types of service agreements?
Yeah, so in that case, as you can see here, there's 3 different types of service agreements: the hands-free, the work share, and the lighten your load. So in that case, I would definitely recommend the hands-free service agreement, and that basically is a full compliance service agreement. So we'll do your annual report, we'll fill your feeders, we'll do your bird surveys, check on your water tables, recharge them, we'll do your Urfa. There's so many different activities we can do. We will document everything and we'll keep everything stored. And so when you have the annual report request, we can put the annual report together and get that taken care of for you. And then there's 2 other options for service agreements. Work share. We have a lot of clients that like to do some of their activities, like they like filling their feeders, but they may want help with, they don't like doing their Urfa, they need some help with some brush, and they'll do an annual report. So they'll just pick and choose the activities they want us to do and the activities that they will do. Lighten your load, that is a service agreement that has 2 services in it. Typically what those are is an annual report. In one service the client just does not like to do, like Urfa or brush management, or something that they love having a biologist on the property for, like a bird survey.
Very cool. So yeah, the key there is that, there's a service agreement to meet anybody's needs. And for someone who, it's kind of like people that are in livestock. So when we finally moved off and we needed help, we had a cattle attendant. We were very hands-off in our ag operation. We had somebody that brought cows out, fed the cows, did everything, and we never saw them. They weren't our cows, but they kept our ag exemption up by doing that. Wildlife management, if someone needs that, it can be done the same way, where Plateau does all the work for them and takes care of it and keeps you in compliance, keeps your ag exemption. And we do that on a quarterly basis where you get to pay for it quarterly to maintain that lower taxes, or it can be anywhere along the way. So, that's a good example.
I wanted to bring up, you're not stuck with the service agreement. So say one year you want to do hands-free, then you move to your property, you do work share. So it's revised every year. I'll work with the fall of each year to get you set correctly for the next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, these folks, if they move back, it may be that they're moving out now because of for whatever reason, and they move back. I know people who move away when their kids move off and they move to a certain part of the country, and then they come back later on, kind of thing. Or so, just keep in mind that we're here and we can help with things like that. Anytime you have something anytime you run into something that makes wildlife management feel like a burden in any way, contact us. One of the first people I met when I came to work here, I was running around as a technician and I met a nice lady on her property, and she told me she felt like her wildlife management, the wildlife exemption, was more work than when she was in ag. And the first thing that hit me was she must be doing something wrong, because it's not, and it shouldn't be. And so we realized that the recommendations that she had gotten from someone else were all these activities that she didn't enjoy and things that were hard to do. And she didn't have to be doing those particular activities. So we molded it more to her liking and her needs and her property, and it became a lot more simple. So anytime you run into something that's going to make this a burden, don't ever think that you need to lose your exemption or you need to quit or whatever else. Call us and let us know, and we can normally find a way to help you out. We can always find a way to help you out. So another question, I'm in Hays County. Does my appraisal district require an annual report? And what exactly is that? Kameron, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, well, Hays County is probably our most interesting county when requesting annual reports. They do want you to do an annual report every year. However, they only request it every 2 to 3 years with a site visit. If you're new in Hayes County, if this is your first plan in 2021, then I would say definitely you're going to need to submit an annual report this year and schedule a site visit. Usually Hayes County sends out their requests maybe late August, but definitely probably in September. It just depends on how busy are they this year. They got really busy last year, so they didn't send requests out till September. And usually annual reports are due between the end of September through the end of December, and that's when they will be scheduling their site visits. And then, like I said, you'll have to wait for your request. If you, for example, if you did a site visit last year, you probably won't have to do one this year, but you will need to do one next year. And then next year, you'll have to submit your 2021 annual report and your 2022 annual report. We will, if you get requested this year, we'll also be reaching out to you personally. We'll have a list of clients that got requested. And so you'll get a letter from Hayes Cab, but you'll also hear from us a couple times to remind you to make sure you guys are all set and ready to go. Like I said, Hayes County is a little bit different. Most counties request their annual report starting in January through the end of April. And so Hayes County is our earliest county that requested an annual report.
Wow. Kameron, everybody, if you didn't get anything else out of this, Kameron is on top of this stuff. As far as that goes, if you ever wonder about what's going on in your county and what you might be needing, what your county might do and not do. For instance, she knows what Burnett County is another one of those kind of odd ones. Sometimes they'll ask for 3 years in a row. Sometimes they'll do, and they do it by name. I think at certain times by last name. She knows kind of, she keeps up with that. And we have other landowners that when something changes in a county, because we've got so many landowners, we learn this stuff as it goes, and we call the counties and ask them what they're going to do. So lean on Kameron, lean on us for help with those things. And Kameron, how many annual reports did we do last year?
And we did almost 1,000 annual reports, I think.
Okay. Almost 1,000. A lot of people, it's a very cheap form of insurance to have us do your annual report because we check them out first before they ever go to the county. You provide the documentation. Unless we're doing the stuff, we put the documentation in there. But if the things you're doing, we look at it first, like an accountant looks at your taxes, to make sure it's going to pass muster before it goes to the county. So be sure and ask about those if you need one. It's probably one of the most important things you can do. It is just a record of the activities that you did throughout the year. It's usually the only thing the appraisal district will ever see that tells them you did what you were supposed to do. So it's vitally important that it looks good. If it does look good, if you send in a good report, oftentimes you go back on the kind of back burner with the appraisal district. They know Tim's doing what he's supposed to do. As long as he turns it in on time, they don't bother you. Turn it in on time and make it look good, and you'll be in good shape. So all good stuff. Good question too. Okay, this one I got the other day. What can I do to keep wild hogs away from my property? They're ravaging my feeders and damaging my property. It was nice from a nice lady who had gotten a feeder, and hogs were tearing up the feeder. And while they were there, they were tearing up the property. First of all, turn off the feeders. If you got hogs coming to your feeders and you don't want hogs on your property, turn off the feeders. She's going to need to pull up the feeder for a little while or for a good period of time and just not feed. They found that food and they know where it is, and they're going to keep coming to it as long as it's there. So, turn off the feeders. One of the things we did on our property, we used to spend a lot of time controlling hogs, kids out there hunting them, trapping them, all kinds of stuff. And we had feeders going, and they came to the property. Once we turned the feeders off, and after we started doing that stuff, continued doing that for a while, we didn't see any more hogs. They went somewhere else. Make changes to the areas they frequent. This is something that I learned and something that was told to me also, but something I learned through experience. They're extremely aware of their surroundings. Hogs, they get in a routine. They know where the feeders are. They know where their food is. They know where their bedding areas are. They know where their water is. They are extremely aware of those surroundings. If something changes in that area, it will oftentimes freak them out enough that they don't go back to that area, or at least they stay away from it for a while. So if they've been coming to a feeder in an area, pull up the feeder and hang a bunch of pie pans or something in a tree, or do what we did and park an old car down on the road. Just leave it down on the road where the hogs used to cross the road. We did that, and I was sitting up at the house and I heard them squeal. And what it was is they were coming down the hill like they usually do, and the sow in the front saw that car in the middle of the road and squealed, and they all bolted. because something changed in their area. If you put a blind up, like a little pop-up blind or something in an area where they frequent a lot, put anything out there that changes that surrounding, it'll encourage that they'll go away. They might eventually come back, but if they go away and they find food somewhere else and they're scared of that area for whatever reason, I always think about a police car parked in Blanco. I don't know if any of y'all drive through Blanco very often, but I do. And I've gotten a ticket in Blanco before. Well, there's a police car parked on the side of the road in Blanco. There's nobody in it, and there's never anybody in it, but it stays there. And everybody slows down. I slow down. And every once in a while, they even change it up. They'll turn the lights on. They'll put a couple of just, battery powered lights on either side of it. So when you drive through there in the evenings or at night, it looks like the lights are on in it. They'll put a dummy in it or something like that, but there's nobody in it, but it changes. I'm aware of the surroundings right there because I've gotten pulled over there before. So it made me think about that, is that police car in Blanco makes people think, and it makes people stop. Hogs react the same way. They're aware of their surroundings. So change that area up. I hope that's interesting or enlightening to some of y'all. I found it kind of interesting, and I was glad I got that question. So one more, I'm going to be selling my property and looking for a replacement. What do I do, and what does a new owner do about the wildlife exemption? So Kameron is a big help with this kind of stuff. I'm going to touch on it real quick. So notify us when you sell your property so we're aware. Kameron, that's one of the things, especially if you have a service agreement with us, let us know that you've sold your property, so we can, cut that service agreement off, make sure that you aren't charged for things that you don't need, but also make sure that you don't lose anything by stopping too early or something like that. We make sure that you're in good stead with the county. Then we can help the new landowner. You want to make sure, if you can, share our information with the new landowner, or if they'll let you, get their information to us and have us call them to make sure that they get the refile done in their name and everything done properly so they don't lose anything. We can make it very worry-free. We can make that transition real easy. Think about our land group. Can our land group help you? One of the things that land group does is they help people find a realtor, find a broker in an area. So if you're going from here to other side of Dallas, I guarantee you, Randy knows somebody. I've used the service, guys. That's why I'm kind of high on it right now. I've never had that kind of experience with someone. It went so well and so smoothly because this person was kind of obligated to Randy, who referred them. And to take advantage of our family of companies, take advantage of the other companies that we use. So if you are moving somewhere, you have issues with the property, you want one of our biologists to look at the new property and get an assessment of it before you buy it. Think about that. But we can also help the new landowners that come in any way you'd like us to. Let's see, then examples of strip mowing. I had more questions on here than I thought. We'll get through my questions and get to y'all's in a minute, but I had somebody ask about examples of strip mowing and what do they do for wildlife. So here's some examples, interesting examples I thought were kind of cool. So strip mowing provides diversity, new growth, and an edge. Wildlife like edges. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see that there's a lot of edge on this property. There's open space, there's edge where they can crawl off into that edge, crawl off into the high grass and find shelter. Same with the path on the left. It's a real good example of what strip mowing does. You mow through that real tall grass, the animals have an area out there in the open that they can see everything. That's where small animals like to be. If you look at the side of the highway, sometimes you'll see pastures where people have mowed strips in them, and all the deer and things will be out in the middle of those strips. And it's because they've got cover close by, but they can see everything out in those strips. And then just some other examples to show that it doesn't have to be uniform. It doesn't have to be anything, specific. The requirements are usually like a third of an area. And then what can happen if you do? The landowner on the right mowed an area and actually dissed it and broke up the ground, and bluebonnets came up in an area they'd never seen bluebonnets before. So I thought that was kind of a cool example of what can happen if you just, use what the good Lord gave you, mow the ground and disc it a little bit, and you can sometimes get things pop up on your property that you've never seen before. So this was a good one that I wanted to share. A buddy of mine did this to me. He wanted me to share this because I was talking to him about water. Said, I heard you have some creative examples of providing supplemental water. Please share. So here's some creative examples. One, the picture on the left there is a pan outside an air conditioning condensation hose. The little pan's full of water. There's a rock on the end where little frogs can get in and out, or whatever wants to can get out of there. But instead of that water dripping off onto the ground, it's dropping into that little pan, which makes it a little more accessible to the wildlife, little squirrels and rabbits and whatever else my dogs, anything else that wants to drink out of there can. but the little rocks are there in case something falls in, they can get out. We actually, I forgot to take a picture of it, but we actually have a little pan like this outside our office. It's about 6 inches deep and it stays full of water, heat of the day, full of water. And there's birds that trickle around it that drink out of that little pan full of water right there by the office. And it's just condensation water. I learned that from an RVer one time when I was in the RV business. They said they provide water to their dogs off the condensation off the top of the RV. They just drop the pan underneath the RV, you know, underneath the condensation drip line, and it keeps the thing full of water all the time. The young man there, I found this picture. I'm sure somebody will get on to me for stealing it, but I thought it was cute. I went to a property one time and a guy had, must have been 20 PVC pipes strung up to trees. And this is what they were. They were PVC pipes that he would fill with water, and they had a little elbow at the end that provided water to wildlife, and the little animals would come drink out of the bottom of that thing. The examples on the right are a couple of our water systems that provide water. And you can see the picture on the bottom right. There's a quail with his back end high in the air. He's heavy drinking water out of that little pan in there. That to me reminds me that anytime you put water out, they will use it. If you build it, they will come. If you provide water to wildlife, they're going to use it. I'm glad this came up right now because we're fixing to get into a time when we're doing some specials on some water features that we have, our water tables and things like that. So that email will be coming out pretty soon. Keep an eye out for it. If you want to provide water on your property, we've got a bunch of different ways to do it. And Kameron can help you with those. The picture up at the top of the little pan with the rocks in it right here, that reminded me of a nice lady in Bear County who, her routine, she walks around her property every day. She carries a jug of water and she pours water into 5 little cookie sheets along the back line of her property. That's her supplemental water. She does it daily. And some people kind of laugh at it or scoff at it. She puts cameras out there, and I've seen more diverse wildlife. She's next to a railroad track, and the wildlife just come off that railroad track in the evenings and drink out of those little cookie sheets. That's what talked me into putting a cookie sheet out here. And that's what she does. And it just reminded me that it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. You know, do what you want to do what you can. And then let us help if you need help with it. So anyway, those are some of my interesting water ideas. Water's a good time right now to provide water for wildlife. Anytime during now in the fall, are great times to do that. You get them used to it, but let us help you with that. So now we're kind of at the open Q&A section. We'll talk about some of y'all's questions, and hopefully we'll have some. Avalon, if you want to remind everybody how to do that, I know we've got a few up there right now, but happy to answer some questions.
So if you maybe joined a little bit later, you can submit your question through the Q&A feature of Zoom. So if you scroll over your Zoom screen, you should see a toolbar that either pops up at the top or the bottom of the screen. And on that toolbar is an option for Q&A. If you click that, it will actually open up a separate pop-up box, and you can just type your questions directly in. So we'll kick it off with the first one here. What is the best chemical to treat Urfa mounds with, and where can it be bought?
All right, so I think what we use is a chemical called Extinguish or Extinguish Plus, and there's also an organic that we used to use, and I can't remember the name of it. It's spinosad, I think, is the ingredient, but Extinguish Plus, and I think you can now buy Extinguish pretty much online through Amazon or through. They may have it at Tractor Supply. Cameron, do you know?
I found it on Amazon. I found it at Home Depot, and Tractor Supply definitely usually has it too.
Good. The Extinguish is a great bait. It's 99.999% corn. It's very docile to anything else. It doesn't hurt birds. It doesn't hurt other animals. They have to eat a ton of it for it to do anything to them. But the ants love it and will take it into the mound, and it does what it needs to do. It's got a growth inhibitor or some type of inhibitor in it, reproduction inhibitor type of thing that destroys the mounds. Destroys the queen, destroys the mounds. So it's a great bait. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. The old standbys work too. Amdro and things like that. If you're doing it yourself, it's more about the treatment method and the consistency of treatment. Treating in the spring, treating in the fall. You treat in the spring to knock them down in the fall. You treat in the fall to knock them down in the spring. So, but Extinguish Plus.
Kameron, does Comal County require an annual report?
They do. I think they're typically due on April 30th. I think maybe last year it was a little earlier, but typically it's April 30th. If anyone ever has a question, if their county is requesting one and then about the approximate timeline, definitely shoot me an email or give me a call and I can let you know. We don't know dates this year out yet, but we will be calling and checking in soon. I can usually give you the approximate date and when it was due last year. Most counties don't change that date. So it's pretty a good date to go by, but it can change. But most of them are going to be due between January and April 30th.
Awesome.
Good. Hey, real quick, I'll give you a little piece of advice, everyone. When it comes to filing wildlife management plans, the statewide mandated deadline is April 30th. That can't change. All counties have to abide by that. Annual reports are one thing that the tax laws, the wildlife management valuation laws give the county the ability to set a date that they want their annual report due. It's different than the April 30th. It can be. And they do that oftentimes, so they're not dealing with annual reports at the same time they're dealing with new wildlife management plans. So they'll oftentimes set it a little bit earlier. Don't miss that date. Don't miss that date thinking that maybe they didn't ask you. Don't miss that date thinking that maybe it's not until April 30th. If they are asking everybody in the county, they're asking you too. You may have missed a letter, you may have missed some other things, but the next thing you'll get from them is a nice letter saying that your wildlife valuation has been removed. And then you just have to scramble a little bit. I speak from experience. Always, lean on us. Let us make sure we help you out. Don't ever think that maybe they forgot about you. They don't.
And what forms are in the annual report? Are there forms available for them to do that themselves?
We actually have the form online on our website. If you go to plateauwildlife.com and there's a forms section on the left-hand menu, but I also can email it to you as well. So definitely shoot me an email if you want me to send that over to you.
Very good.
For the annual report, does the county Gillespie contact the landowners, or do they need to make the initiative to submit it?
Gillespie County will send letters. Typically Gillespie County is due the end of January, and past couple of years they've been sending them out the beginning of December, middle of December. So you will get a letter from Gillespie County. So if you don't get a letter by the end of the month in December, shoot me an email so we can make sure we get you taken care of.
Thanks, Cam. You are a wealth of knowledge on that.
Really random.
You blow my mind. I mean, y'all, you got to understand. She works with thousands of landowners every year, and with all these different appraisal districts, and is on top of what each. Anyway, and there will be times somebody will stump her at some point, but it doesn't happen often. But if you do, what's cool is that if you do, she calls, gets the information, and gets and finds it for you. But right now, she's pretty hard to stump.
Yeah. Are there options for adjacent neighbors to do a wildlife plan if they haven't been in ag?
Yeah, if you haven't been in ag, you have to get an ag first. So the property has to be open space valued first. Sometimes adjacent landowners, it becomes a little easier because you can put the two properties together and you then have a kind of a bigger swath of land. But each property will need to qualify for some form of ag, and you'll have to establish for 5 years. There are a lot of programs, whether it's ecological laboratories, one of them that we're involved in, where we help people establish ag, where you don't have to do the traditional means like livestock or grazing or baling hay or something like that. If you want more information about establishing ag, maybe shoot us an email offline, or Avalon, if you can get me that question, I can provide this person a little more information about who they might reach out to here at our company that can help them discuss different ways of getting into ag. We offer a service where our biologists will actually come out to your property. Remember, our biologists are also property tax consultants. They'll come out to your property and based on the conversation with you and your goals and what you're interested in doing and the history of your property and like you just mentioned, two neighbors together, that kind of thing, they'll provide an assessment and recommendations on what the most effective and efficient means of getting into ag are. Getting that ag valuation are. The end goal for us is that you get your property into ag and eventually decide, hey, I want to move into wildlife management. Then we have even a greater interest in the property. But our interest is to help you get that ag valuation if you can. So love to help if we can.
Can you tell us how much the basic service to initiate the wildlife exemption is?
Yeah, so the basic service, the first thing you need to do, you need a wildlife management plan. So applying for wildlife is no different than applying for any other kind of ag. You have to file an application, a 1D1 open space application. The difference is that you have to, when you do that, you have to provide a wildlife management plan. That's what we provide. Our biologists come out to the property, they visit with you on site, they find out what you want to do, they talk to you about all the activities, and they provide you a wildlife management plan. It's based on the acreage, the size of the property. It's anywhere from $1,750 up to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for very large properties. You know, anything 0 to 30 acres is around $1,750. Usually averages around $2,000. 100-acre, 200-acre property, anywhere from $1,995, $2,295. We work with you based on the county you're in. Sometimes there's some special prices in various counties. So a good thing to do, one way to figure that out is to, if you go on our website, there's a link for a do I qualify for wildlife management. And if you plug that in there, if you send us an email and just say, hey, I'm in such and such a county, I got this many acres, and I'm in ag, we can tell you exactly what it'll cost and help you get started. But it's right around $1,750 to $2,000 right now. We've still got some specials going on. I'll be happy to talk to you about those. So.
Using game cameras to do census activity is producing between 700 and 4,500 pictures per camera per week. We are monitoring 3 cameras, so that's a lot of pictures to review weekly. How many should I enter on the census wildlife logs I keep each week?
Yeah, so good question. I did that too and got hundreds of pictures, not as many as you're getting, but got hundreds of pictures and different ways of doing that. I just basically, I kind of analyzed those pictures and I tried to explain what they meant to me and what they were telling me about my property. I saw a bunch of deer. I tried to make some sense out of the pictures that I took. When you're doing it yearly, if you're doing it all year long or for a long period of time, it's picking a period sometimes that, during this period, I saw these animals, but provide representative photos. So when you're providing that to the county, you don't need to provide all those photos to them. Just tell them you did a camera survey. You collected a whole bunch of pictures, and of those pictures, here's what you saw. Roughly, this many deer, and they seemed healthy. A lot of raccoons, and they seemed healthy too. Saw some foxes, saw more foxes than we did last year, saw more turkey than we did last year, that kind of thing, to say, kind of what it, and based on that information, this is what I'm going to do with it. We're going to do some predator control this year because we saw a bunch of predators on our survey, and then provide some representative photos. I always like to send, when I send those photos to the appraisal district, I always like to send the coolest photos. If I got a picture of a bobcat, I'm going to send that. If I got a picture of a deer with one antler or something like that, I'm going to send that. I'm going to send the pictures that are kind of fascinating. They just want representative photos to show that you actually did the survey. The other thing you can do is that our guys can analyze those photos for you. Our biologists could actually take the data that you've collected. We charge, I think it's $250 per camera. Now, they've got to limit that to some number of pictures. But if you want to talk to us offline or talk to us again about that, we can analyze those photos for you, and they can give you some real biological recommendations of how to move forward based on your camera data. So we can do that too.
Awesome.
Hope that helps.
Any additional tips for bird watching and documentation?
Man, I enjoy it. I don't know. I mean, Kameron, do you have anything? I know you're.
Well, we just did that webinar. We had a watching webinar that should be on our website, Avalon.
Yeah.
That might be a good resource.
I think it was like an introduction to birding for landowners that was posted.
Did Danielle do it?
Danielle did it.
Yeah. Point them to that because that'll be fascinating. So if y'all want to go online and go to our webinar page, or Avalon, I'm sure can send out the link later. That's good information. I'm not a bird guy. I'm not a bird watching guy necessarily. I enjoy it, but I don't know, how to tell you to go about doing it and the right things to do and where to position yourself. One thing I would consider is look around your local area and see if there are bird watching groups even, or maybe the master naturalist or something like that, or there'll be lists of bird blinds. Maybe you can go online, like here in Dripping Springs, the Dripping Springs Ranch Park has a bird blind that they've built. The master naturalist built it. They had a grand opening for it. It's a really nice bird blind that's surrounded by a bunch of feeders, and you can go in there and sit, and the birds come to the feeders, and you can document what you've seen. They've got a book there that talks about the different birds you might see. I know, what's it called? West Cave Preserve here in Dripping Springs. My daughter and her friend did a silver project for Girl Scouts, and they did a bird book that had all the different birds that you could possibly see, and it's really well done. You can go and sit in that bird blind and find birds and look through that book and see what you're looking at. So looking for, local resources, look towards, different organizations like that. If you've got we have a Wild Birds Unlimited here. That's another good resource. So if you've got a Wild Birds Unlimited in your wherever you are, reach out to them. They'll know who to talk to in the area as well. But we can certainly get you some resources of our own too.
We also offer bird surveys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're interested, not only would you get one activity done, but you get quality time with one of our expert birders.
Yeah, that's
We'll give you so many tips. Yeah, on your property, giving you tips about the birds on your property and how you can do it yourself next time.
Yeah, sure enough. That's a great way to learn.
Well, that actually looks to be all of the questions for this evening.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate everybody being here. This was cool, and I enjoyed it. I'm going to throw our information up here real quick just for a minute. Kameron Bain's email address and phone number are mine. You can reach us at the office. Avalon, I want to thank you again for kind of like I was talking about my kids and my bird dogs, making us look like we know what we're doing. Avalon puts a lot of work into these, and I really appreciate it. Kameron, thank you for being here. Thank you to all of our landowners. Y'all go out there and do something good for your land. Kameron, you have anything else to say as we go? Nope.
Yeah, just once again, don't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me an email. I love meeting you all and talking to you all. So definitely reach out if I can help with anything.
Great. Thank you all. See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.